Hey guys, welcome back to Panhandle Pulse. I got a great guest today, and Jared Maxwell. He's a former U.S. veteran and an author. Jared, welcome to the show today.
I appreciate you having me on, Chuck.
Great. So, for the people will you tell us a little bit about your background?
I grew up in Florida, so my family's from New York, so Florida is really all that I know.
Okay.
So I've lived here all my life except for the 9 years I did in the military. And then, a very small amount of time in New York. But for the most part, I'm a native Floridian.
Yeah, that's good. And what led you to join the military?
So, my family, I still have a lot of family up in New York. And the 9/11 attacks happened in my senior year in high school.
Okay.
So the graduating class of 2002, basically became the military class because of 9/11. Everyone was joining the military. So that was, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. My mom wanted me out of the house. So I figured that was the best bet was join the military. So I was looking at, I was just researching to see what I wanted to do. Obviously I didn't know much about it. So something that stuck out to me was the Army Airborne.
Yeah.
I thought that just sounded so cool to me. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. I didn't even think about the fact that I'm from Florida. I've never been around heights.
Okay.
So I kind of had to learn the hard way on that one, but it still sounded fun. So, the first jump, I was about to wet my pants, but still, it was,
Yeah, the same way. I don't want to. My son and wife want to do skydiving. I'm like, I don't want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. If it took off and land, I just want to
yeah.
stay on it.
But they gave us, it's extra $150 a month and you get a cool red beret. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yes, that's what you get.
So you got over your fear of heights pretty quick.
Yeah, I had to. The first jump scared that right out of me. So,
Yeah. And now I see you talking through your profile here. You were deployed multiple times over in Afghanistan and other areas.
yeah. So when I initially enlisted, the after the 9/11 attacks, they had sent troops in Afghanistan. And so Afghanistan was basically the focus, but at the time, for the most part, things had winded down and they just had a situation in Iraq that was popping up at the same time. So by the time I enlisted, it was in August of 2002. Afghanistan wasn't really the focus anymore. It was
Right.
more like what's going to happen if we go to Iraq. So all through basic training and all through everything that I did, the focus was you're probably going to go to Iraq. So once I got to my unit, I was in the 82nd Airborne up in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We were on standby to parachute into Iraq for the invasion. And then they decided to not do that because they didn't want to fly us all the way from Fort Bragg, I guess.
Okay.
So instead, they pushed us back a couple months and we deployed right after the initial push. And we took over the west side of Iraq in Fallujah, which became famous later and all that. But at the
Right.
time, no one really knew what it was. It was it's a really big city just west of Baghdad.
Yeah.
So that was
And
my first deployment.
how long were you
Uh,
deployed over there for?
8 months. We
Okay.
The 82nd at the time, basically, it's like a contingent unit. They don't really do regular rotations. So they only deploy when it's an emergency. So they needed us to go. So typically when they would do that, the deployments would last anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So we weren't sure how long we were going to be there, but we ended up being there for 8 months.
And during that time period, did you travel? My sister was deployed over there for a while, so she would travel to Germany for short stints, or were you there the entire 8 months?
No, I was there the entire 8 months.
Okay.
They had R&R rotations that were going to certain areas, but I wasn't there long enough to do a full R&R, so I wasn't going to go home or anything. A lot of people were going to, I think, Qatar and a couple other places, like in the United Arab Emirates, all those places.
Hmm.
The some of the allied countries. But so for me, my only R&R I got was midway through. I got a break that was like, I think it was like 3 days long, where I was in a local base in Iraq. And it was a nice resort area. It wasn't bad, but the problem is that it was in the middle of this base that was getting rocketed and mortared all the time.
Yeah.
So, I'm still listening to bombs go off while I'm supposedly on R&R, but
Right. What did that experience teach you as you said, dealing with the fear of jumping out of helicopters and planes and that before to the stress level of being over there? Like, how did that shape you dealing with stress, fear, and everything that was going on?
well, I think I had quite a few jumps before we deployed, and the jumps that we did in Fort Bragg were not like we did in Airborne school. Those were actual combat jumps where we would jump in with full combat load, and we would do like a 72-hour mission.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of training at the time, and once you've jumped out of planes so many times, you kind of lose a lot of fear. So I don't feel like I wasn't really afraid of anything when I went there. It was just kind of doing my job.
Yeah.
So the deployment wasn't the most intense thing in the world, I don't think. I mean, we did a lot of raids and stuff. And there was some shooting. There were a couple critical incidents, but nothing that I could really say was really anything that wore me down.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that one really just motivated me to keep pushing. So I re-enlisted after that, and I stayed in. I was going into special forces at the time, and the during the pipeline I got sick, and I got recycled in one of the phases. So in the meantime of getting recycled, I didn't really feel like doing the phase all over again. So they let me go back to big army for a little bit. And what happened was I went to the actual big army. I went to the not the airborne, the regular standard infantry.
Hmm.
So I went to the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum, New York. And they were slotted for Iraq as well. So when I got there, for one thing, I got there during a blizzard. You know, so
Yeah. In New York.
in New York, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's also it's not even like it was in I'm from Long Island and like the New York City area and stuff. It wasn't even like that. It was it's on Lake Ontario and it's right on the Canadian border.
Yep.
So this it's like these Lake Ontario leads into swamps just east of it, and then it goes into the mountains, the Adirondacks after that. So the area that I was in, it was all these frozen swamps basically. So it's like this super wet cold. It's like -30 in the winter. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that was wow. I never thought I would see cold like that in my life. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm from Florida. Like I don't even have a tan up here. Like what's going on? But
Yeah. You may get a little dusty and never get any snow down here at all compared
yeah,
to where it's up there.
I remember like we were training up there, and I got in a sniper team when I first got up there. And when you're in a sniper team, you build what's called hide sites, where
Hmm.
you dig in and you set up an area for observation. So we were marching through this. Like I remember at one point we walked across a frozen creek to get to where we were going. So we're walking across like an iced over creek, and we set into the snow. And they were saying, "Oh, the roads are about to go white out on the roads." I think they said. And I'm like, "What's that mean?" They're like, "It means we need to go." So we had to
Yeah.
pack up and like we're dug into the snow and like I'm putting all my stuff together and I start seeing these snowflakes fall that were about this big. Like and it looks peaceful too. Like there's the really beautiful snowflakes coming down.
Yeah.
But then you realize that there's millions of them and they're not stopping. So we had to move fast. So on the way back, another like windstorm came through with like another like mini blizzard. And we're walking through a total whiteout. And I remember like my hands were frozen. I couldn't feel my face. So yeah, that was crazy. But
Yeah.
so that unit was going to Iraq, and then right around the time it was in 2005 in summer was when the incident happened with the lone survivor. You remember that with the Navy SEALs?
Yes.
So that whole thing happened, and there became this need for a push to go into that area of Afghanistan. The Marines owned it at the time, but the Marines were doing exactly what we did in Iraq, where they work out of a forward operating base and then just patrol the valleys and then come back. So, and they were warning us like they took heavy contact inside the valleys. There were IEDs everywhere. They were just like, yeah, it was too dangerous to go out there all the time. So the idea was that they wanted us to now go there instead to Afghanistan, to those mountains, and basically set up outposts and actually take over those valleys and basically live out there where the enemy was. So that was totally different from the Iraq deployment. That was like something out of Vietnam, is what it was.
Okay.
Like we were living in small outposts. We took enemy contact every single day. We were getting shot at every single day, all the time. And when we're out on patrol, we had to go and set in ambushes. We're setting out claymore mines and trip flares and stuff, all the stuff that you saw in those old Vietnam movies. That's what we were doing.
Right.
So basically everything that you ever learned as an infantryman, we had to do. Um, so the mountains were really rough too. The high elevation, very steep, and it looks like Colorado. Like it's rocky mountains that are covered in forests. So
Hmm.
these forests are like, very thick spruce and holly and stuff like that. So if we took contact there, most of the time we couldn't see who was shooting at us. We were totally blind by all the trees and the rocks and everything. So yeah, it was rough. That was we were there for 15 months, and the contact was endless. Like it was just not stopping. It was like I think so. One of the areas that we took over was it later became famous as well. It's called the Corngal Valley.
Okay. Yep.
So yeah, the Corngal at the time, no one knew what it was. We were the first ones to go in there, us and those Marines, and the Marines left, and we took over and built a base. So the Corngal is only 6 miles long. It's a very small valley, but there was this huge timber trade coming out of there, and basically because of all the forest, they were deforesting and using the timber to use for trade. That was their only source of economy inside that valley. It's very tiny. So they wanted us to stop the timber trade because they put an embargo on it because they were using the timber to trade weapons with the Taliban. So foreigners go into a valley that's owned by maybe a couple thousand people, and they see that we just cut off their only source of economy. So that naturally led to violence, and the violence didn't stop. They were persistent. So they drew outside support, they drew Taliban support, foreign support. They had Chechens and Uzbeks come in there. And we ended up typically if an infantry company went into the Korengal, if they were there for a year, they would be in an average of 500 firefights.
Right.
Yeah, it's like more than one a day.
Yeah.
So I went in there and then I actually left the sniper unit I was in. I went over to a line unit and I was back and forth. I was inside the Pesh and the Korengal, and I was all over the place, all around that same district that surrounded that valley. So I was in myself like just under 200 firefights when I was there. So yeah, it was just basically like walk up and down mountains, carry a whole bunch of stuff, and then shoot, get shot at, and then keep walking. That's pretty much what our job was.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So
Most people don't even hear those stories or know that even existed over there.
it's actually rare. Most because I was deployed 3 times, and that's the only time I ever saw anything like that. And it's only in that area that it was really that prevalent. Where they said that those 6 miles in the Corngal Valley accounted for an average of 60% of all enemy contact in the entire country.
Oh,
So that's why it was so intense. It's just that small concentrated area.
yeah.
So yeah, not a lot of people have been there. So that's one hell of an experience. So that was rough. That basically demotivated me. I was totally burnt out after that deployment. I had a lot of friends get killed over there, and just had PTSD when it came back. So I wanted to get out, but I had just enough time in that I was going to be stop loss for one more deployment. So like the way it worked is if you had like so much time in, then you're about to deploy, then you have to deploy, and you're basically it's kind of like being on overtime. You're getting paid time and a half while you're deployed.
Right.
So there's no way around it. I was deploying again. So what I wanted to do was go back to what I knew. I went back to the Airborne.
Okay.
So I went back to 82nd, and they were getting ready. They were deploying to South Afghanistan, which is it's a lot different. Still rough, but it's not quite as bad. So in that time, the 82nd was jumping on some of the major rotations. So it was going to be a year long instead of like the normal couple months. So we were actually we were training quite a bit. I got a lot of training on that right before that third deployment. Everything that I learned when I was in the Cornwall and the Kunar and all that stuff, I basically sharpened all those skills where, I was already, I got a baptism by fire when I was over there. So I learned a lot,
Right.
but then all the skills were sharpened by all of these amount of like training events that we were doing and schools that I was going to. So deployed for that third one. And yeah, it was still rough. It just wasn't as bad. I was down in like Kandahar and some areas like that down in the desert. So yeah, those are my deployments though. It was a total of 3 deployments. Came out to 35 months in combat that I did.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, everything that you just talked through and experienced, that there's something that you learned about human behavior that people have never seen, that you're transitioning now into storytelling and leadership into the books that you're doing. Is that how you've transitioned to writing books?
So yeah, when I first got out, I wrote a memoir from that second deployment, and that was more out of therapy than anything else. But the reason that my family moved to Florida though was because my parents worked in the entertainment industry.
Okay.
My dad was a film producer and also an audio engineer, and my mother was a Broadway performer. So I grew up around storytelling and creatives and all those strange people you see in Hollywood. I've been around all of them.
Yep.
So I had a knack for storytelling in the first place. So what I wanted to do was go into writing at some point. So when I got out, I was going to college for creative writing for English. And while I was still in college is when I published that memoir, which it was before I had any real formal education. So It's just my editors probably made it look better than it was because I wasn't that great of a writer at the time. I could tell a
Yeah.
story, but it was all about sentence structure, all that stuff. So once I had education, it became a little bit different. So I worked in law enforcement for a while, and because of writing reports all the time, I didn't really have the motivation to write anything else. So writing got put on hold while I was in law enforcement. I was a cop for 11 years. Got tired of that. It wasn't really not so much the job, it was just like the politics behind it. It's not very fun. Like
Right.
everything you do is under scrutiny. It's just not a good place to work. So I got out of that, and what happened was between that, 9 years in the military and 11 years in law enforcement, I had every story to tell now.
Right.
So, and I have all the time in the world to write. So I sat down and last year it only took me a month to write this one book. It was called The Last Gunfighter.
Hmm.
Action thriller. Well, it's like a neo-Western action thriller is what it is. And I used some of my own experience, but it's still fiction though. Wrote that, and then it's been doing pretty well. But I had other ideas that I wanted to write that I was more motivated for. So, just this past month, I published two. One of them is because the whole thing in the Corngal happened exactly 20 years ago, like last month. So, or sorry, in March of 2006 is when we went in there. So, since it's the 20-year anniversary, I figured, there was a story that I had when I was in the Corngal. I came up with this idea of, you know, we're in there and it's a rough area. So I'm like, what if someone had to go here alone? Like that was the idea. So I wrote that. Only that didn't take but a couple of weeks to write. I already had the idea down. I had it for 20 years, so
Right.
I wrote it down, published it, and then I started finishing Code of Vengeance, which is my most recent, and it's probably the one that's been picking up the most steam and the fastest. So that basically is the idea is that it was based on some experience when I was a cop, but it also talks about like it kind of makes fun of law enforcement culture, kind of makes fun of
Hmm.
some of the politics and there is corruption, believe it or not, in modern day law enforcement. It
Right.
makes fun of that, and then it also takes aim at Florida, the the strange cultural ecosystem that we have in Florida.
Right.
You
You
know,
had some Florida
it's
man jokes inside there to some degree.
it's absolutely a lot of Florida, man, and you know, and it's everything that you see out of Florida, like on the news. It's you see some of the weirdest stories and some of the most horrific crimes, right? Is all in there. So
Yeah.
it's dark humor is what it is. And yeah, the idea behind that was just, I'm gonna make like this is gonna be hilarious, but it's also gonna be really dark. It's so I actually coined a term for it. I made this genre doesn't exist, so I kind of made up the idea for a genre. I actually put it in the preface. It's called Florida Noir.
Yeah.
So the old noir stories that you saw, like the old Humphrey Bogart movies and all this stuff, like
Yep.
all the dark, rainy areas and the morally compromised characters and all that stuff, like smoking cigarettes, all that stuff that you see in noir is in this, but in a Florida setting, in a modern Florida setting.
Gotcha. So how do you balance that, the new part of the Florida noir with the realism and the fiction portions in your books and novels?
So all I did was take stories that I already knew and kind of put them all into it's actually it reads kind of like an epic, like it has a long character arc going through it. Where I took basically designed some characters that, were all of them are a mess. Like you have a cop that's burnt out. You have like one that is decent at his job, but he also has a absolute chaotic personal life. And basically, I drew the arc over time to show like how basically everything falls apart for this one guy, and then it turns into absolute chaos. But it goes into the kind of chaos that you see in Florida, like a lot of it. So, you get the crazy storms, you get strange alligator calls. And, you get, some of the strange, the drug related things. Like you see the guys like they smoke meth and they do something stupid with a venomous
Right.
snake or something. Like, so like it's all just kind of incorporated into that realistic story. Like everything about it is something that could actually happen and, people that have read it so far have said that like if you don't live in Florida, you would think this is absolute insanity. But if you live
Right.
in Florida, you'll say, no, that's a Tuesday. Like that's just the way it is. Oh yeah, the biblical thunderstorm comes through and someone got shot and then a gator and a guy in a mobility scooter that's drunk and throwing things. Like yeah, that's just a Tuesday.
Right. There are definitely some good Florida man stories and jokes from around here. Moving from the DC area,
Absolutely.
you'd think that area was in its own, but down here we have it's a whole nother world.
It is because you have all the elements of the Southeast, and then some other stuff from like that you see like people like transplants from around the country that come in. So you have this strange mix of cultures put into its own like Florida culture,
Yeah,
and to us, chaos is just part of the week for us. It's just it's always something going on down here. Like I live on the Space Coast, and we just had an earthquake. Uh,
yeah, yeah. I've seen that out there this week, out in
yeah, it hit
the
most of
ocean.
Central Florida, and yeah, it was that was and I didn't even think anything of it. Like I felt shaking. Then I'm like, oh, like did a neighbor drop something? I don't know what that is. So and then or I live near the highway, so I thought maybe something happened on 95.
Yeah,
And then I see in the news, oh no, it was a what was it? 8 magnitude. I don't know how do you measure that, but some like moderate sized earthquake that happened in the Gulf, and I guess it trickled over across Central Florida. So,
yeah.
and this is like a week after we just had, I live on the Space Coast. We just had a rocket explode that
Right. Yeah, the Amazon rocket.
totally lit the entire night sky in a orange. So fun place to be.
Yeah, it is a great place to be. When I first moved down here, we have a bunch of air bases over here, Tyndall, Eglin, and that, and they do test
Mm.
bomb drops. And so the house was shaking at the beginning. You're like, what is that? What is going on? Until you realize what it was. You thought you were in an earthquake or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they call so the Panhandle they call that the Lower Alabama Panhandle, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to think what it used to be called. The Redneck Riviera is what it was,
Uh,
but we've changed it to the Hamptons of the South is the new term.
they say the farther north that you go in Florida, the more southern it gets.
Yeah, that is true.
Jacksonville, everything north in the Panhandle feels like the South, and then once you go south of there, it becomes completely separate culture.
Right,
And then you get to Miami, and I don't know what that place is. That's
right.
kind of its
Totally
own
different
country.
culture. Yep. Yeah. So do you self-publish all your books? And how did you learn to figure that out when you started publishing after you done read all your books?
So I have a publisher for Last Gunfighter that went through my publisher, Palmetto.
Okay.
But the most recent two, the Wolfhound Dawn and Code of Vengeance, I wanted my own control of certain things in these ones because they were stories that I put a lot of work into, and I really wanted to make sure that everything was correct.
Yeah.
So I tried out the self publishing, and it actually worked out great.
Good.
So I'm probably gonna some of the larger stories, I'm probably gonna go back through my publisher for those. But for things like these, that where I can easily self publish something like this.
Yeah. And was that easy to figure out how to self-publish through an online publishing?
So, are you familiar with Microsoft Word? Like,
Yeah.
are you really familiar with like the intricate workings of it?
Yeah, I use it for just note taking and normal stuff, so not anything deep inside it.
So, formatting on Microsoft Word, I learned it in college, but I still had to go back and research again because it's so easy to forget all of this.
Yeah.
That is not fun to do. It's a lot of work. You typically this last when I was publishing Code of Vengeance, I was behind my computer in this office for I think about a week straight, and I was running on like 2 hours of sleep a night because I was just like running through every single chapter and trying to format, make sure everything was correct on the page and all the headings were correct and everything. And Word is very finicky when it comes to that. So I'm fighting with Word the entire time that I'm doing it. So no, that was rough. It is much easier to go through my publisher for sure. And then same with designing the cover. That takes a lot of precision when you're doing that because you have to make sure that it fits the exact dimensions of how it's going to look when it's actually printed on that cover.
Right.
If you get the spine wrong, the spine's going to be off or it's going to be overlapping. So it's it came out great. I'm very happy with the way it came out. But yeah, it definitely was a lot of work. It's very labor intensive.
Yeah. And where do you publish them on for people to go find your books, either through your publisher or the self-publish that you want on Amazon, Audible? Where can people find your books?
My Amazon author page is just Jared Maxwell.
Okay.
They can just look on there, and it has all of my books listed right there. On Goodreads under my same name, Jared Maxwell. And then really just you can Google one of the titles you want to look at, and with my name, it'll pop up. Wolfhound Dawn is a very unique title, so if you look up that, it's only going to come up with that book.
Okay.
So Code of Vengeance comes up. If you put Jared Maxwell, it comes up with that. If you put Code of Vengeance, it will, but it also show a couple other things. Like there's the word vengeance is used quite a bit. So you have like some of these. I don't want to judge them, but they're like AI written tactical thrillers. Like I call them tactical bro novels.
Yeah.
Like where you spend like you spend you know 30 pages talking about someone's gear that he's wearing, things like that. But I do see some of that on there. But that's not what this is. This is just a crime epic, is what it is.
Yeah. And so what's your goal for the next few years on publishing books? It seems like you really enjoy it. You can crank them out when you get into it. There's a passion behind it. You get locked in and start writing. Any new ideas that are coming up in the future?
Yes. So I have one book that I totally finished that is not ready. I'm not going to put that out just yet because I want to make sure that I build enough of an audience before I put it out, because it's like I'll try to dumb it down as best I can, but it's like 650 pages long. It's a dystopian epic, and that it's very dark, and it takes place in a totally messed up future and everything. But that also has the same kind of world building that I did for Code of Vengeance. But Code of Vengeance is also only 400 something pages, so it's not quite it's that level. So that one's fine. A lot of people want to read it, but that one was done a long time ago. I am just letting it sit there until I'm ready to publish it. Really, I'm going to go through my publisher for that one probably, just because of how large it is. I need someone else to take care of that for me. Then I have one that I have started a rough draft for, but I'm actually going to redo it. But basically, I have a romance or a espionage adventure romance that I wrote. It's like it's both at the same time. It came out good. It has a lot of tension, and it uses a lot of real intelligence tradecraft that you see in intelligence agencies and stuff. And it also has a love story that goes along with it. So
Nice. And how do these ideas come into you? You just walk around one day and something pops in your head and you're like, that would make a great book.
kind of, yeah. So the first one that I ever came up with the idea for, actually, both of these were when I was, like I said, when I was deployed. I thought about the idea of someone having to go into the Corngal alone, and I kind of, when I was in college, I actually developed a character for that idea. Because when
Okay.
you're in creative writing, you have to learn how to develop characters and how to develop, your plot and everything. So I wrote a character sheet for the main character for that. Then I wrote, one of the times we had to write a screenplay, and I named it Wolfhound Dawn. And the screenplay was basically the first act of what this story would be. So I wrote it. The professor, I got an A on it. She said that it was some of the most marketable material she's ever seen. But that was a long time ago, though. Nowadays, people are a little more burnt out on when it comes to war. So it's
Yeah.
not quite what it was before. So that was more of an honor, the reason that I published it. But Code of Vengeance, I came up with the idea out of catharsis.
Okay.
I was angry when I left law enforcement. I was just so tired of all the politics and everything, and it just came up with a story. I'm like, well, what if like someone went through all of this and they chose violence? Is what I was like, what if they did that? So I'm like, so I wrote the story and I looked it over, and I'm like, no one would ever read this. Like, I'm like, and if you saw what it looked like, you wouldn't, you would just want to put it away. No, I don't. No, thanks. Because it was so angry and hateful and mean, and like, so I didn't look at it again for about 6 months, and I looked at it and I'm like, this needs to be entertaining. Like, if I want to publish this, otherwise I'm just going to throw it away.
Right.
So that was when I came up with the idea. I'm like, well, it takes place in Florida, and there isn't a single alligator in this book. There isn't a single hilarious tweaker doing some hilarious tweaker things in the book.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm like, this needs to be a comedy. And I'm like, and it has law enforcement in there. I'm like, there is such a intricate culture inside of law enforcement that you can find comedy out of all of that. You can easily make fun of all the different types of cops you've met, all the different types of units you've seen. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, so I went back through and I totally revamped the book, and it came out to what it is now, which is a dark comedy. And, when I was editing that, and when I was formatting it, I was reading back through it. And I had to take breaks every now and then because I was just laughing too hard. I'm like, "Did I really write this? This is hilarious." Like, and, like, I just had to, like, step away and drink some water. I'm like, "I can't stop laughing."
That's pretty
So, yeah,
funny.
the ideas just kinda come every now and then. I'm not sure. So the dystopian epic I came up with that idea because I saw something. I think it was on one of the streaming channels, maybe it was Netflix or something. They had this whole documentary series about the rise and fall of the Nazis and Adolf Hitler, right? And a lot of it is really interesting. I was actually surprised how interesting it was with how this guy was able to build a reputation, and become this dictator when he was basically a nobody before that. So that actually is what kind of sparked that idea. I'm like, well, what if, modern times or near future, someone is able to rise similar to that? So the idea was building a character that was based kind of not, it wasn't totally on him. It was actually closer to to Joseph Stalin. But that was the idea behind that was how I could, see an archetype that turns into like someone that is seen as a hero, but he's actually a villain. Right.
Right.
So So yeah, it's just when they come to me like that, I'll just kind of jot them down on notes in my phone and just like come back to them later and think of what I could do with it. The romance idea, I don't know where oh, you know what? I do. That was a fever dream. I had a fever dream. The fever dream was that I don't want to actually, I don't want to say what it was because it'll give away the story,
Right. Yeah.
but that, but the idea for that book actually came to me in a dream that I had. I woke up and I thought about it. And I'm like, went over to Microsoft Word and just jotted down some quick notes on it, what I dreamt. And then I came back and started actually writing a story out of it. And actually, it's coming out pretty good.
All right. Yes, it's good.
But
Well,
yeah,
we look forward to reading those.
yeah, appreciate it.
So it's been great having you on the show today. I think the guests are really going to like hearing your background, especially some of the military experience that you shared today, and the
Yep.
novels that you're putting out there that seem entertaining. And I'm looking forward to grabbing one of those and reading those this weekend. Now that you said that, so everyone can find you. You listed it on Amazon. Are you on any social media platforms? I'll post the links to that
Yes.
through here so people can get to that.
Yeah. So the Amazon author page I can give you right now, and then I can give you my author Facebook. If someone wants to contact me directly, is facebook.com/author Jared Maxwell, and that's if they want to
Okay.
message me directly. I don't post a lot on there. It's more for people reaching out.
Okay.
But my author page is amazon.com, and then you do /author/Jared Maxwell.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I'll post those links in here so there'll be hyperlinks for the people that go to the website and view it. Jared, thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if you have any Floridians listening, then definitely check out Code of Vengeance. You'll probably recognize quite a few stories in there. Chuck, I appreciate it.